and welcome back to Book and Page. We are just finishing up Aristophanes today by finishing up his Wasps. Ooh, this didn't exactly go well for Cleon, or Cleon either. So, let's start with our basic summary of what happened in this last scene, and then talk about things in a little more depth. Okay, so we start with the servant Zan re-entering the stage to speak with the chorus, and it turns out Filio can't hold his drink. He was at a party with some fancy people and got so drunk that he started beating up poor Zan. This got worse when one of the patrons of the party jokingly insulted him. Filio jokingly insulted him back and then got a little too serious with the insults and kind of offended everyone at the party. Zan then flees into the house because Filio is coming, and it turns out he didn't stop with the problems at the party. Filio enters having abducted the flute girl from the party. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Especially considering the poor woman just watched him assault a lot of people. And he actually has a torch which he's been fending people off, including a person who's followed after him that Filio insults and sends on his way. He then starts hitting on the flute girl and trying to put the moves on her, kind of insinuating that she was going to have sex with people at the party anyways, so why not him? He then disguises her as a ceremonial torch when his son Deli comes running in because he doesn't want to get caught with her. Deli, little more intelligent than that, recognizes the flute girl after feeling her up, I might add, and sends her on her way. He then turns on his father, upset that the only lesson the old man seems to have taken to heart is that whole thing about talking about fancy, stuffy stories whenever somebody tries to talk with you. The evening gets worse when several of the people Filio assaulted or insulted arrive with witnesses, including a baker woman and a man that, is ready to charge him with assault and battery. Filio, though, no longer cares for the court. He doesn't care if he's going to get in trouble. He's just ready to insult practically everybody. He does so by talking in stories, but they're always stories that make the other person the bad guy. Yeah. Deli then picks Filio up, quite literally picks him up and takes him into the house, while the chorus actually praises the change seen in Filio. He's no longer a working man, he's there for the life of luxury. We should all do this. And in fact that Delio encouraged it, well, good for him. He's a real son for that. Filio then comes out and dances a dance with 3 crabs. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what happened there. Kind of a turn to the absurd right at the end. So, let's try and pick some of this apart. Some things are, super obvious. Again, the girl in this situation doesn't have any agency at all. And she's sort of an interesting pair-up then with the baker woman who Filio apparently ran into and, knocked her tray down and ruined all her bread. Because then we have both women have jobs. The flute girl is a flute girl. She plays the flute at parties. And the baker is a baker. But these are, again, on 2 different levels from each other. Yet, of the 2, we do have one that's it's more the image of luxury, at least. She plays the flute for a living and goes to fancy parties. But notably, again, she's the one that doesn't have any agency here. Filio has abducted her from the party. She doesn't get a say-so. She has to kind of just act like she's a torch. Tiggs, why? Don't walk through the tripod. The cat has agency, at least, and things that she's not going to touch. Yeah, so this woman doesn't have a choice. She kind of just has to stand there. Not only is Filio acting this way, but Deli acts offensively. Like, he literally feels her up, just like his father does. And whether or not Filio's being honest, he does say that the party was probably going to get a lot more sexual for this girl. Her choice here doesn't matter. Notice she doesn't talk. She doesn't have a single line. She's there to look pretty and get felt up. The woman who does get to speak on the stage is the baker woman. And she's sort of, again, the salt of the earth image. This woman who is making her living and has just kind of had her living thrown on the ground. And we suddenly get the sense of what the justice system is supposed to help with. Which is that this lower class woman should be able to take this higher class gentleman. Tiggs, you are right against... She's decided she needs to clean herself, and she needs to do so leaning against my tripod and moving it. So, no, you're just gonna have to deal with the fact that I moved it. Cat aside, this baker woman uses the justice system here because she's on a different level than the person who assaulted her. It's supposed to even everybody out. It's supposed to look at somebody who is acting offensively or aggressively and punish them to help the person who doesn't have any other course of action. This baker woman who's lost an entire day of work, an entire day of earnings now, because of Filio. But we've kind of seen how corrupted the system is anyways. But we see in this moment who it is there to protect. And then the other person who is assaulted doesn't want to go to court because he's, again, recognizing the cost. It's expensive to do so, and time-consuming. And suddenly we have an image of what the court system is supposed to help with, and we have, again, more of the corruption. It's supposed to even everybody out, so people who are in lower income brackets get justice. But that's not possible if the court system is too expensive for them. What course of action do they have now? Except accepting it. Like, they just have to stand there as Filio insults them. But they've also figured out how to use the court system well. They've brought in witnesses. And here's one of the interesting things. So the baker woman has a named witness who is actually a philosopher who Aristophanes has insulted in a previous play, which is The Clouds, along with Socrates in that one. And he insults him by looking anemic. But this is that weird thing where we disagree with both the character and the playwright here. Like, that philosopher didn't do anything. Again, he also doesn't have any lines. He's there to serve as a witness for a person who needs the system to work for them. And I find it fascinating that the philosopher is bearing witness for the woman. Because again, women in Athens, Greece, they're not in powerful positions. The fact that we're seeing a working woman here is absolutely fascinating. Deeply upsetting when she's then paired with this silent girl who's there to get assaulted. But it says something that the philosophers seem to understand what's happening a little bit more. I'm going to move you again because the cat just readjusted and is continuing to give herself a bath and causing me problems. Isn't it always? She's there because I was sitting there before I put the camera in, and it's warm. Cause and effect. And that cause and effect seems to be what's happening on a whole here. So we've seen some images of why the court system is necessary. We've seen some images of why the court system doesn't always work. And then we're sort of having this moment of like, well, it's better than this, right? If Filio had just continued to operate as juror, he wouldn't be nearly as problematic as he currently is. For anybody. He's problematic for Delhi, he's problematic for the flute girl, he's problematic for all the people he met in the street. And it almost seems that while there is a critique of the court system here, there's a more full critique of people who judge others for working for their livings. And this is really weird to say, right? So Filio, Delhi especially, is trying to teach Filio to exist within this gentlemanly realm where you don't have to worry about working, you just drink, problem solve themselves, you wear fancy clothes. And Filio is showing the extreme problem with that, which is when you become a problem to society and don't give anything back. And you're just spiraling into the farce. That's why we end up with dancing with people dressed like crabs. It is supposed to be absurd. Because when you're giving nothing to society, well, where do you end up? You end up like Filio. And the name here, again, is important, Filio Cleon. This is a direct comment on the supporters of Cleon. But it also points out the problems of people who blindly hate Cleon for their own selfish reasons, which seems to be Delio Cleon on that one, right? Because he's ineffectual and makes problems worse. Like, he hasn't solved anything with teaching his father to go drinking at parties. He has actively made it worse. And we almost have a switch in roles here. Well, we do have a switch in roles, because Filio starts acting like he needs his son's permission to do things. And eventually, when he gets older, he'll have control of his money. And when his son dies, he'll inherit the inheritance. Well, it's the opposite way around, right? Filio suddenly becomes a young, peaceful gentleman who doesn't have anything to do, so he just makes a mess of things. And Delhi somehow has to be the responsible person who fails to do so, because you'll notice he takes his father back in the house, never reappears when Filio comes out. Nor does he step in to make any amends for the choices made. So, having jobs in society might not always result in the best things, but it's certainly better than these people who are just sloughing off all types of responsibility and saying, guess what, I'm just gonna drink all day. It's this really weird thing where it's kind of like, well, how do we solve this problem? I don't know, but there's a problem here. Well, how do we solve it? Well, I don't know, but there's a problem here. Because even the people who you think ought to help solve the problem are ultimately made fun of in the play. And this happens twice. There is the philosopher, right? You think we can learn from them. He is silent through the play, just like the flute girl, he has no agency. He is insulted and then he leaves. And that's it. The other people are the three crabs at the end. So this is very interesting because it turns out these gentlemen are the sons of a Trajan and warrior, and are also warriors and Trojans themselves. So, writer of plays, right? Again, that experience through play acting is coming in. So the philosopher and the tragedians should offer us a way of solving these problems, and these characters are silent to the point where they're just treated like absolute farce. Like, the boys come in dressed like crabs. If you're wondering, that is a play on words. It turns out their father, in one of the battles he won, was named King of the Sea, and his name also translates to crab, so he becomes Crab of the Sea. And it's a play on words where you're kind of, again, by the end of it, just like, so where are we? We've hit the absurd. We have literally hit the absurd, and there's no solutions. Well, is there supposed to be any solutions? The key thing to keep in mind is this is a comedy, so we are supposed to be laughing. We can think about it, and we can realize there's some problems, but solving those problems doesn't seem to be the realm of a comedy. Well, except when it is. A lot of our modern comedies do have solutions. Things work out in the end. They don't, well, end with crab people dancing. So what's happening here? Well, maybe it's Aristophanes. You see, throughout the play, there have been fourth wall breaks, where the actors have very actively recognized that they are performing a play, and at times are performing within performances. Several times, chorus leaders come forward to make complaints about how the society and the audience have treated Aristophanes, and how Cleon has. So maybe Aristophanes is here to offer a problem and then give the solution his audience is expecting. Which is to say, not a solution at all. Because they're not here for anything serious. They're here to laugh. So that's what he gives them. We can look at this play and see how absurd it is and how problematic this is. But every time Aristophanes tries to dig deeper and critique society, or certain members of society, well, he gets smacked down. So end in a dance. Basically end with, look what you've done to society. The rest of the world is laughing at us now. Take a bow, exit stage left. It's a terribly cynical way of looking at it. But how else do you explain Filial Cleon doing a dance with some Trajan crabs as the chorus says, "Excellent, everything's been solved," when nothing has been? Aristophanes says, look, there's some problems, but all you want is to laugh it off. So I'm done. There you go. You have created and raised a lion in the city. And now you have to control it. And suddenly this play isn't just about the court system. This play really is about a playwright who's been wounded by society, who's been told to keep in his place and do what he's good at, not to get uppity, not to get involved in politics. Suddenly all those stories that Filio's telling his accusers, well, Aristophanes is one of those accusers. You don't take me seriously. You don't take my art, my livelihood, seriously. And I can't even take you to court. Wow. And unfortunately, this is something we still do today. How many times have we told players of sports, actors, singers, to stay in their own lane, keep their noses out of politics and business that isn't theirs? The important thing to keep in mind is it's politics. It's all of our business. It's how our city is run, how our state is run, how our country's run. Paying attention to it is critical. Aristophanes and the Wasp here offers two ends of the spectrum, which is to feed into the system without thought, and also to feed off of the system without thought. The wasps don't have a sting anymore. That's a little uncomfortable. Let's take a break from the deep philosophical thoughts and think probably other deep philosophical thoughts. But, at least we can beat up some monsters doing it. That's right. Okay, so next video we will be starting into Beowulf. Well, not quite. I think we're due to talk about some epics first. That's right. We're gonna talk about the epic form, and then we'll get into Beowulf. But we gotta fight some monsters. And think some thoughts. So I'm gonna keep reading, and I hope you do too. See you next time.